Good afternoon. I'm Father Bob Stephen, Rector of St Mary's in Handsworth and Chair of Governors at St Mary's School. Ordinarily, we would have met in school and we would have had an open meeting at this time, but because of COVID-19, that's not possible. But we have asked for your questions as we look forward to joining a MAT, and we want to be as open and as transparent as we possibly can be as we approach this very important step in our school life. So I'm Father Bob. I know most of you, certainly most of you know me, but I'm going to ask everybody else who's here, some of whom you know and some of whom you won't know, to introduce themselves too. So first to our head teacher.
Hi, I'm Jo Booker. I'm the head teacher at St Mary's Primary School in Handsworth. I am in a privileged position to be the head teacher of a fantastic school with a fantastic community, and I think that joining a MAT is going to enhance our community and enhance the offer that we can give to our children.
Richard.
Hello, I'm Richard Payton Devine. I'm a foundation governor at St Mary's. I've been governor here for 2 years now, and this year I've been elected as the vice chair.
Thank you. And Giles.
Hi, I'm Giles Allen. I'm the chair of the Trustee Trust, and I have been so since the trust was started. As chair of the trustee board, we in turn are answerable to the members of the trust, which are the next layer up.
And Claire.
And hello, my name's Claire Granger. I'm the leader of the Ferretti Trust. I've been a head teacher since 2007 in a range of different schools in both Devon and Birmingham. I've been the CEO of our trust since it was established in 2016, and I love my job. I love what I do, and I love that the trust is making an impact on children across different schools within the city of Birmingham.
Hello, my name is Michelle Tasmat and I am the Vice Chair of the Ferretti Trust. I do apologise that I couldn't be part of the panel, and this was due to prior work commitments. I wanted to take this opportunity just to say hello as the Vice Chair, and just to tell you a little bit about myself. So I've been a trustee for just under 2 years now, and prior to this I didn't really have any connections to the trust or St Francis. I wanted to volunteer because because of my skill set as an educator, been an educator for over 20 years now. Also a parent of 3 children who are now all successfully at university. I'm a qualified accountant and I lecture at Birmingham University in that subject area. That's it really, but thank you for listening. I really do appreciate it.
Okay, thank you very much. That's the panel as we have it today. Just by way of introduction, St Mary's School has a proud heritage. It is the first church school in Birmingham, and the building in which that started is still standing opposite where the school is now, and we use it as the church hall. And so we are very careful about how we proceed with that history and the present. And we have been looking at joining a MAT, certainly a multi-academy trust, sorry for the alphabet. But we've been looking to join a multi-academy trust in all the 6 years that I have been on the governors at St Mary's. And we've never quite found the right MAT to join. But when we were introduced to the Ferretti Trust, we recognized kindred spirits, those who shared our same values and ethos, unashamedly Christian church school, to celebrate diversity and being an inclusive community. All of those things resonated with us when Mrs. Booker and I went to visit the schools. Now, one of the things that people are concerned about is, by going into a MAT, are we going to lose our name and our identity? Well, I can assure you, absolutely not. St Mary's School came from St Mary's Church, and we're not giving it up, and we're not losing our identity, because we found people who have that same core value system that we want to espouse, making every child special, making sure that every child really realizes the potential as best they can, respecting each individual, and all of that bound by Christian values. So we're not losing our name, we're joining like-minded educationalists. And there will be no perceptible change in the classroom experience. So yes, the cynics will say all multi-academy trusts cost. And yes, they do. There is a top slice that we pay that is going to ensure that we have our membership up to date within that trust. But that will then lead us to some savings. And trust me as a Scotsman, if it didn't, I wouldn't be doing it. So that there will be the economy of scale, that the schools together have greater purchasing power than one individual school. And also some of the administrative costs will be shared within the MAT. Thereby, we won't have to pay for those ourselves. So that becomes quite an important thing for us to consider. And we will still have local governance within the MAT. There will still be governors elected by parents from time to time, and governors appointed by the church, because that has been our scheme of governance. And we would be hesitant, whatever you think of the governors, we'd be hesitant not to be able to have that sort of local input into the running of our school. We have taken our time, you'll know that, but we believe in the Fioretti Trust that we have found like-minded people, and that they will preserve both the history, the present, and also help us to look to the future in a very positive way for St Mary's School community. So as Chair of Governors, I'm very happy to commend it to you. Thank you.
Two questions that are very similar are, what is going to happen to my daughter's education and how will the change affect her? Alongside, what kind of impact will this have on my child's education? From St Mary's perspective, the curriculum and the education of the children will not change. The curriculum will remain the same as is set out in our policies, as is set out in our progression mapping within school. The curriculum that the children currently undertake will remain. The only changes to that will be where there is potentially room to develop and enhance the curriculum through shared working across the MAT, looking at expertise across the MAT. Our strength in particular at St Mary's is looking at our heritage curriculum. It's also looking at how our foundations are built within the church school ethos and how that filters across the curriculum. So that in terms of their education, in terms of within the classroom and what the children will be doing, there won't be any major changes to that. We will all have the same shared goals of enabling the children to have a broad and balanced curriculum to be able to reach the expected standards at the end of their primary career.
And if I can just add in there that on some visits to St Mary's, I've been particularly impressed with what I've seen happening in the classrooms and in the curriculum. One particular lesson that stands out to me was a year 6, a group of children in year 6 that were talking to me about some of their written work about their local area. It was very clear that they're very passionate and they're very proud of their community, of the area that they're growing up in. And even just within a short spell of being in that lesson, I learnt myself some new facts about Handsworth, and they were just beaming, and they were just, and they're very proud of being part of St Mary's and being part of living in the community of Handsworth. And that's really important to me as the leader of the trust. And that is one very clear reason why, when we developed our trust, we kept the governance structure in place that each school would have their own local governing board. And that's because our local governors know their community and their stakeholders best. The trust board, we make trust decisions, but we're trusting our local governors to guide us on what's happening in their local community, because they know their local community better than the trust board, and we need to learn from them. So to have our local governors being engaging and active in the life of the school is really important to the trustees, and that's why we try to develop relationships between the trustees and governors, and they, you know, that's why, especially we're talking about the curriculum here, it's really important that we have a set of governors that review and monitor the curriculum that's going on at St Mary's, because those children, they benefit best by having a curriculum that lends itself to the needs of their community.
Hello, my name is Giles Allen and I'm Chair of the Board of Trustees of the Fioretti Trust. The role of trustee is a volunteer role, and trustees come from many backgrounds. We have trustees from the professions, from industry and the Church of England. The Fioretti Trust is a multi-academy trust consisting at the moment of primary schools. We're supported by the Church of England and the diocese in Birmingham. The trust is not a school as such itself, but it's a body that supports and contains schools. All of our schools are in a tight geographical region in the heartlands of Birmingham. We are a growing trust, and we look to add schools when and where there is a good fit with us. That is where the incoming school has something to offer us and we have something to offer them. There are three important things that I think you should know about our trust. The first is that we value diversity, and our diversity is rooted in the richness of that word, because we value each and every pupil in all of our schools throughout our trust. The second thing we value is effectiveness. We like to achieve what we set out to achieve. This is evidenced by our high educational standards, our good governance, and our constant attention to detail. And the third thing that we value is efficiency. To be efficient and to get the job done, we all need the right tools and to know how to use those tools. And that's why we continually invest in our systems, our processes, and our training. I appreciate your interest in the Fioretti Trust. And if you would like to know more about the Trust, you can always contact me by emailing me at chair@fiorettitrust.co.uk. Thank you.
How will the partnerships with other schools help the teaching staff at St Mary's? Partnerships with other schools are really important, whether we are part of a MAT or a standalone academy, whether we were still a school that was part of the local authority or a diocesan trust school. Partnerships with other schools are immensely important to enhance the practice of our staff, to be able to look at best practice elsewhere. We pride ourselves on always striving to ensure that we have the best practice and that our children are the best that they can be. And to have a partnership with other schools, particularly supported through multi-academy trusts, enables St Mary's to be able to ensure that not only are we self-evaluative, but we evaluate one another in terms of best practice of teaching. Are we current? Are we doing the best for our children? are the children able to get the best out of the curriculum? That partnership with other schools helps the teaching staff to ensure that they are current. When you are a standalone academy trust and not a multi-academy trust, it's quite a lonely place to be as a practitioner, because you don't have the local authority really anymore to cascade down information. So being part of a multi-academy trust is really going to support the teaching staff to ensure that they're current, they're up to date, they know what the best practice is, and they are able to deliver that within the classroom. One of the things that the staff are particularly looking forward to is actually, when we're not in this current climate, is to be able to go and look at practice in other schools, to be able to pick up the telephone and say, right, we're looking at this in maths, what are you doing, will that work for us? And to have other professionals to be able to bounce ideas off, to be able to find the best solution for our particular environment. Whilst in one of the other schools they might also be looking at maths, which is our particular focus at the moment, they may not be approaching it in the same way. And to have an opportunity to discuss that practice will give us ideas, but it will also help us to identify, is what we're doing at St Mary's best for St Mary's? Because not always is what somebody else is doing for their school going to best fit our school. Being part of a partnership enables us to ensure that whatever we do is with the best interest of the children at heart.
Also, within Ferretti Trust, we have some formal partnerships and some networks that take place on a regular half-termly basis. For example, moderating standards, especially in English and writing, across the schools. Because we're a church mat, the church inspection, which is called the SIAMS inspection, we have a working party where our RE leaders and our collective worship leaders can gather together, collect evidence and support each other with their toolkit. But we also have some ad hoc networking, and that is where teachers can just email each other, pick up the phone, and obviously when we're not in COVID times, go and visit one another. And just even during this last academic year, I can say we've had some ad hoc staff development in reading, maths, phonics and curriculum development, where our curriculum leaders have worked together. A new working party we're just about to launch in the spring term is a pupil premium strategy group. And again, it's so our leaders and governors across the schools can gather together to get up-to-date guidance on pupil premium and looking about how pupil premium money is spent, how it's used effectively, and how we can report that and show impact, because that's a requirement we have to report on our website. So it's a mechanism where we can come together and support each other, so we're not doing things in isolation and we're not generating lots of extra reports and works, but we work from one template and share ideas, share the workload, share ideas and support, just be there to support one another.
So I'd just like to sort of echo and support what Mrs. Booker said about working with other schools. Just from my own experience, I was previously governor at a school in Yardley, which transitioned from being a local authority school to a MAT, and that was a big MAT. There was about 8 schools involved. But as a governor, we were sort of challenging ahead and asking questions about, progress of the children and the staff, and it was clear that there was a lot of best practice being shared, bouncing ideas off each other, and as Mrs. Booker said, when times change, when staff are able to sort of go to other schools and see what works well, what doesn't work so well, I think all the schools in the MAP benefit from that.
With the Ferretti Trust, what are your plans for growth, and how quickly do you expect to add any schools if you do, and will you accept any school that applies?
One of the values, one of the with the value adds of a trustee board and trustees and a MAT is that the MAT looks at the strategic level, and the expansion of the trust is obviously an important strategic issue for the board. The political and financial reality is that a MAT has to be of a certain size to really go forward successfully. And so the Board of Trustees feel that the trust should grow further, without a doubt. I'd be lying if I said anything else. What we've done so far, and our strategy is certainly, is to grow in a way which enables us the schools join us as we go. So yes, we have a growth agenda, without a doubt, but it's not growth at any cost. We want to be sure that we tailor our systems, grow our capabilities at the same time as we add schools into the trust. Now, as to which schools will join the trust, we're a family. We see the trust as a family, and we want to have other schools that share our family values. That's very important to us, and it is as much that we want to welcome in the right schools as we hope the right schools want to join us. So fortunately, we haven't ever been in the position where we've had to say, no, thank you, we don't want you. But I could envisage that that could be the case. But yes, a growth agenda. Yes, the right schools. And yes, we'll do it in a controlled way so that we can be sure that is a successful process.
Thank you.
How long have the other schools been in the trust, and how has the trust helped other partnering schools within the trust?
Well, the trust was established in 2016, and we really have had a steady growth path because we wanted to ensure that we had the correct systems and processes in place before we began to grow. So the Board of Trustees, they were very mindful about their skill set and about what the trust was going to look like, and we never rushed this process at all. So we were established in 2016, and it wasn't, the second school didn't join us until October 2019, which was just over a year ago, and that's because we wanted to make sure that we brought on another school on board in a successful, we had the capacity to make sure that was a successful transition, which it has been, and which is why we know we're confidently ready to welcome our third school, which we're very excited about. And then how we've helped other schools. I've already talked about numerous networking that we do. We've talked about how that's been beneficial to teaching staff, but not just to teaching staff. You know, schools come with lots of expertise and lots of other members of staff, whether they're support staff, whether they work in the office, whether they're cleaners, whether they work in the kitchen, family support workers, members of staff working towards fast tracking and attendance. You know, it's endless, isn't it, our job in schools? Clearly, teachers are very important, and we do really focus on their CPD within the trust, but we are there also to support all our members of staff. And when I send out, at the moment I'm doing monthly memos to staff, that goes to every member of staff in our team, because we are one family. We include everybody in all our communications. All staff are important to us, because all staff together, working together, have an impact on the children, and that's why we're here. We're here because the children are at the centre of everything. Every decision that we make is for the children. So we've got a number of networks that take place for all members of staff. So, for example, before COVID, our office managers travelled together to London for a conference for office managers as part of their performance management objectives. That was nice for them because they then got to know each other off-site and actually has some time to actually talk about their job, which obviously in a busy school office, that's quite difficult to find that time during a normal school day. That's just one example how we've supported other staff other than teachers. But we also support governors. We've got an accreditation governing training package running at the moment. Again, COVID hasn't stopped us from doing that. We've just changed how we run with it, and we're doing it virtually. And we did invite the St Mary's governors along to that training, and some of those governors attended. And we've done part 1. We've got 2 more parts to go. So we're there as well to make a difference for governors. But I think the one thing I would say from living and breathing the experience of the trust and how it's developed, and if you talk to my head teachers in both St Francis and St Barnabas, our schools, they will tell you the biggest difference it's made to them being part of a trust is that the trust level, i.e. me, I take shoulders the weight of all the compliance, the audit, the financial returns, the statutory requirements, all the compliance of being an academy. The trust oversees all of that, and the trust pays for all of that. So the trust will pay for the external and internal auditors as well. And what this does, it takes those pressures away from the head teachers so they can really focus on their main job, which is the teaching and learning. So they have got this more space, they've got more energy, they've got more enthusiasm to really take a lead on the teaching and learning, the education, the standards, the progress, the attainment, and the exciting stuff that happens in school. You know, the educational visits, the outdoor learning, all those exciting things, the things that which involves the children the most. The head teachers have that headspace to really make a difference there. And that, I think, if you talk to my head teachers, that's what they will say is for them the biggest advantage of being part of this family, that they haven't, obviously they engage in the processes of risk assessments, etc., but it's me, it's the trust team that oversee those processes.
What are the plans and expectations the trust expects from our teaching staff and our children? And in regards to that question, how and when would you expect to implement plans?
I think quite a simple answer there is just to say there will be no additional pressures placed upon teachers and the children. Again, from previous experience, when you talk to the teachers, when we go through a transfer into a MAT, they really don't notice any major changes. Like I said, the school name isn't being changed, the uniform's not being changed. There's no changes to St Mary's. You're unique. That's why you want to join our trust, because we want to keep our schools in our trust unique. We want them to, believe in their values and live out their values. So the last thing we want to do is start making big changes. If your curriculum is great and it suits the needs of your community, you carry on with your curriculum. So from my perspective, St Mary's will continue to do the grand job that they're doing. There being no additional pressures placed upon teachers or the children at all.
Will staff be expected to leave St Mary's to temporarily cover other partnering schools within the trust?
There's no expectation for staff to move their job and their role between schools at all. Since we have been operating as a MAT, there's only been one occasion where there's been a secondment to another school, and that was for career development for a member of staff, and they were fully supported by the governing bodies of both schools. That's quite unusual, and it's not an expectation at all. The schools are placed roughly about half an hour away from each other, so they're not on the doorstep of each other, so we wouldn't be, you know, expecting staff to move to other schools at all. That's not our ethos. That's not an expectation from the trust board at all, unless an opportunity arises and members of staff wish to take up that opportunity. But as I said, in the few years we've been operating as a MAT, that's only happened on one occasion.
And if I can just add to that, for those parents who were part of our school community when we were a support school and supporting another local primary school where staff did move from school to support, this is a totally different setup. It won't be that we're going to their schools to support them or for them to come and support us in the way that we have done previously. This is more of a partnership and a supportive process. This is not about us taking our staff away from our children. So the final question is, what about the costs for resources, etc.? Will school maintain their own budgets? Will all St Mary's funds raised be placed into the trust fund for all schools to use or share as part of a partnership fund?
The arrangement for funding of a MAT is that the money that is made available from government to run schools is paid into the MAT bank account, and it is ultimately, for good or for worse, the trustees of the MAT who are responsible for that money to the government. They are the ones who at the end of the day are answerable. But what then happens when that money arrives into the trust bank account is it's shared out amongst the schools according to their budgets and according to their pupils. In fact, almost exactly the same as it would be if it was a maintained school. So the funds come into the MAT and then they're shared out to the schools according to the school size. There is, of course, a cost to running the MAT. And that has to be covered from the school budgets. The trustees are strongly driven by creating value, and it's really value that is tremendously important to us, so that the overall position is that we want to make sure that schools can get on with teaching, and they're not having to worry about their budgets, they're not having to worry about their money, they're not having to worry about audit, they're not having to worry about financial regulation. So each school will have their budget. The local governors in each school are responsible for that budget, and they will spend it as they see fit in consultation with the trustees. So there should be no noticeable change to spending within a school when it joins a trust. In fact, you would hope that the staff in the school would start to look a little less haggard and worn as they stop worrying about their financial returns and their auditors and all the other financial paraphernalia, which now the trust will take onto its shoulders, the MAT will take onto its shoulders. Alongside that, we aim that there will be savings from group purchasing. So the more people who purchase, the more schools that purchase, hopefully they lower the cost. We're moving towards seeing how we can share resources between schools. Funds raised locally from parents, groups and what have you certainly will belong to the school. But we also want to have a sense of family, in that we want long term to be able to help schools out if they have an emergency. So I can envisage that there will be moments when we will try to direct more funds into one school if they have a particular issue. But just in a family, you would share that out amongst all your children. It wouldn't just be one that would get it. So our intention is to manage our finances professionally across the trust, to make sure that we deliver value, and to make sure that the schools individually can concentrate on what they can do best, which is to teach, have control of their own budgets, but also for the trust to take the lion's share of responsibility for funding and for returns to government.
And if I can just add that the money that St Mary's receives for their pupil premium, these are our vulnerable children, that is completely ring fenced, and that will stay with those children, those vulnerable children at St Mary's. That doesn't go into the Ferretti Trust pot at all. That stays with those children. It's ring fenced for those children.
Thank you. That's a very important point of clarification. The money for individuals stays with them.